Hello, welcome back. This is Miniature Mike, and upon request, this video we're going to talk about Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, whatever you want to call him. So he's kind of known for being the OG, basically the OG Force battery, essentially. So, anyways, without too much further ado, let's just kind of jump right into it. There's like 7 or 8 of these guys. They're all pretty similar. Some better than others. There's like the fighting Palpatines, and then there's like the passive kind of battery and force weapon ones. So the first one we got to start with is Rebel Storm. So Emperor Palpatine, cost 40, 130 hit points, 20 defense, no attack or defense, or damage I should say, no powers. He just has force powers. He starts Force 4 and Force Renewal 1. That's kind of unique because I think he's the only character in the entire game to start with 4 Force and have Force Renewal 1, so it's kind of fun how he has like a kind of a head start with Force points, which is honestly a little underrated. I think it's definitely kind of solid, especially since he has his commander effect. So he's got Force Lightning and Storm for defense, and the commander effect is basically characters in your squad can spend his Force points with those stipulations listed, which is a fantastic commander effect, like so underrated, because if he's charged up enough, then everybody in your squad, every turn, if it's got to roll a save again, if you got to re-roll something, if you got to move a little extra, it's just crazy how much it can help in so many different situations. It's totally crazy. So the key is trying to make sure he has enough force to sustain that, and that's the hard thing, but it's not too bad. He's got a little bit of a head start. So this one, I think he's a really good piece. He's honestly, like, I'd consider him the best Rebel Storm piece. Still holds up pretty good. However, there's better ones, well, for the most part, but overall he does a pretty good job. So I think he's really good. He's got great hit points. Paying cost 40 for someone who's technically not melee. He has ranged powers, even though it's just force powers. It's pretty solid. Doesn't have good survivability though. I think the max damage is pretty solid, considering Force Lightning. His force powers really solid, especially has like a leg up. I mean, Storm, I don't really think Storm's that great, but I guess it could be helpful sometimes. Lightning is nice, of course, and then the fact that he starts with a lot of force, which is good. His versatility, I think, is solid, mostly just because I think his commander effect kind of lends itself in its own way of versatility, where the whole team is really benefited. So him existing can create so many interesting situations for your team to kind of get at trouble. So I like that. I think his commander effect, like I've already said, in my opinion, I think it's one of the most useful commander effects, especially if he's all charged up. And then Blue Milk score is at 8.23. It's very, very good. It's a force battery, and one thing you'll see with Emperor Palpatines in general, they're all kind of expensive, sort of. Like this one's $22, which isn't honestly too bad. It's just a little bit more pricey than some of the guys you typically see. And there's actually 2 of these. There's a Rebels and Imperials version, which I actually have. I don't know how I got a hold of that one. And then there's the original from Rebel Storm. The Rebels and Imperials version's probably worth more, but because they're hard to find. But they're basically the same print, same card essentially. But yeah, overall, nice guy. I like that he starts with the 4 Force. I think that's pretty nice, and just kind of a good, general, solid Force battery if you want to use one. So moving on to the next one, from Clone Strike, we have Darth Sidious. So it's kind of funny how he's a separatist, which, makes sense, but in his own way, he's kind of on his own team in Star Wars. So he's a 36, he's a little cheaper. That's reflected slightly in the defense, being a little bit lower. Still has 130 hit points. Actually, did the last one have 120? Yeah, no, they're both 130. So this guy's got Dark Master. So essentially, it's like the last guy's commander effect, but now it just applies to one unique character, one unique allied character, and it could be any allied character. So it doesn't have to be a Force user, but whatever. If you want to, that's fine. So it's a little more limiting than the last guy, but it's still great, because if there's really one specific person you want to focus on, that's okay. So his force powers are a little different. He has Sith Lightning instead of Force Lightning, which I don't like it as much because it's a lot less potential, but it's okay. And then he has Pawn of the Dark Side, which is kind of nice. So it replaces attacks, sight, one non-unique allied character takes immediate turn, which doesn't count as any of your people from the activations of the phase, and then at the end of that person's turn, it takes 10 damage. So the cool thing about this is if you choose like the right squad, if you choose, you know, the right non-unique allied character to do this with, they can, you know, more or less maybe have 2 turns essentially, or you can put them in the right place, and then you can do some interesting manipulation with it. It's a bummer that it's non-unique. It would be cool if it was unique characters, but there's still lots of good non-unique characters to choose from to make it worth it. So just something to keep in mind. Also, I apologize again if you hear any background noise. It's from a 3D printer. The thing's basically constantly printing, just so we can, so I can kind of keep it rolling, keep printing projects. Like, for example, the boxes. I'm printing some New Republic boxes right now, and they look fantastic. So I apologize ahead of time for the noise if that's very noticeable. And then his commander effect is essentially gives people flurry attack. So it's not exactly flurry attack. It's just they may make enemy extra attack, and it doesn't specify against who. So I'm not a huge fan of the commander effect. I think it's kind of meh, but it's not bad. You know, if you put it with the right squad, maybe give it to someone where, you know, people get deadly attack as well, then you can kind of make it a little bit more, they hit better essentially. But I'm not really a big fan of commander effects that improve critical hit stuff, because it's just such a rare occurrence. It could never happen, or it could happen a lot, or it could just happen on average, but it is what it is. So with this Darth Sidious, I think, again, his hit points are great. Not the best survivability. The max damage is fair. I knocked it down a little bit just because Sith Lightning doesn't have as much potential as Force Lightning. You're potentially missing out on hitting groups of characters, but it's neither here nor there, I guess. His special abilities, Dark Master, I think, is a great one. I know it's just one, but you know, it's kind of what he's for, his purpose, and it's a very solid one. It's basically like the last guy's commander effect. So his force powers, again, very solid. Pawn of the Dark Side's a really fun flavor, fun thing to kind of work with and manipulate with. Kind of fun giving people, in some cases, like 2 turns, especially if they're a really good character, and have other maybe buffs going for them. And so, let's see. So his versatility, I'd say overall is great, because he can do a lot of stuff. You know, the commander effect's his own thing. He can buff up as a force battery for somebody, and then Pawn of the Dark Side essentially like that is really good. So his commander effect, I'd say, is fair. Not my favorite. I don't think it's terrible, but it's not my favorite. I left ability synergy kind of blank just because his only special ability is Dark Master, and I guess that does pair with, you know, Force Renewal. However, I just didn't think he was the right kind of person to rate something like that. So his Qui-Gon score, oh no, I didn't change all of these. And I'm going to fix this really quick. That bothers me. Let's see here. Palpatine, not Qui-Gon. This is taken from my template I made for Qui-Gon, and that's the only guy that I did not change. So, okay, let's go back into it. And we are back. So overall, I think he's a good force battery. Blue Milk rates him more than the last guy, probably because of Pawn of the Dark Side, but for some reason I think I like the last. I think I like Emperor Palpatine just a little bit more for some reason. I like that he starts with more force. He's just a battery. I like his force powers a little bit more, except Pawn of the Dark Side could be really cool. They're just kind of different. Like, one guy's, you know, more specific, like, hey, I'm just kind of everyone's battery, and the other one's like, hey, I'm one guy's battery, and I have this commander effect, and then I have Pawn of the Dark Side. So I think maybe Darth Sidious is a little bit more versatile. So it's kind of neither here nor there. They're both really, really good, kind of in their own ways. So the next one is Emperor Palpatine Sith Lord. So this is my hot take. I'll say right up front, I think this character, unfortunately, I really wanted to love him, but I think he's crazy overrated, and I'll get into why in a second. So he costs 62. It's quite a bit. He's 130 hit points, 20 defense, 15 attack, 20 damage. So the attack is great. However, this guy has no survivability to save his life. So that aside, he's got Betrayal, which everyone knows, when Betrayal works, pretty wild. However, as far as I understand, you know, if someone rolls in a 1 against him, if it's especially a Force user, you could just re-roll it, and then avoid the 1, and so you don't have to worry about it. Of course, that may not always happen. But the thing is, though, is rolling a 1, it's kind of like rolling a critical hit. It's a 1 in 20 chance, which, I mean, how many times are you going to really be rolling the dice for him in the game? Sometimes it's like, I just feel like betrayal is a power, like, if it works, of course it's fantastic. But it's like you're banking on something that's so improbable. And unfortunately, a lot of he's really weak besides that, so I feel like that kind of is a hindrance to him for the most part. So, yeah, when betrayal works, it's great. However, I play with the expectation that it's not going to happen very often. And so with that being the expectation, I say, okay, well, what else does he have to offer? So I think Execute Order 66 is a really dumb, gimmicky power. If I was going to redo this entire character, I'd take away his commander effect, and I'd essentially kind of swap it. I'd say he has affinity, and then characters with Order 66 can be in his squad. That takes care of that. And then I give him a commander effect that says, characters in your squad with Order 66, or allies with Order 66 in your squad, they gain, I don't know, so maybe he's like +4 attack, +10 damage against Force users, something like that. I know this is an old character, it's Rebel, it's Revenge of the Sith, so Wizards of the Coast probably wasn't thinking that, of course, and that's fine, but at the end of the day, not my cup of tea. I think the way he's designed is really clunky, like, cannot be targeted by a character with Order 66. I mean, let's be real, who on earth would ever use, if you're ever going into a match and it's Empire versus Republic for some reason, why would you ever use clones? I mean, you just wouldn't. So, like, that power kind of doesn't matter. So, it's dumb. And he has triple attack. The nice thing about him having triple attack, though, is he has 15 attack, so there's a good shot he's going to be able to hit every hit, make every hit count. So that's good. He has limited force, but he has enough force. He's got Assault, that's good. Sith Lightning, that's fine. Then his commander effect is just your squad can include characters with Order 66, which can be kind of fun. If you can bring in some interesting clone troopers into an Imperial squad, you could probably find some interesting combinations. However, like I said, I'm just not a fan of the way this guy's designed. So much is just banking on betrayal, and I think that's just too much to ask. And unfortunately, whenever I've used him in a lot of situations, I just find him to be so squishy. Like, I get into a situation, it's like, okay, let's use that attack, let's do some damage. But because he has just 20 defense and nothing else to speak of, his hit points just evaporate for a 62, and that's not good. So, all in all, I gave him a really good score. He's still really good. However, if you'll notice, when everything kind of shakes out, he's probably one of the lower Emperor Palpatines, just in general. So his hit points are fair. For a 62, the 130's kind of average, maybe a little below average, just a hair. His survivability is pretty poor. I'm only giving him a 2. I would give him a 1, honestly. However, I'm giving him a 2 just because betrayal exists. It could happen, but it's not something you're going to bank on. His attack is really good. For a 62, though, 15 attack is pretty normal, so it's not like that's out of the ordinary, to be honest. His max damage is also good with that 60 damage. Force powers are solid, they're just solid force powers overall. His ability synergy, I don't think is that great. Like, I just don't see where his powers really necessarily synergize very well together. They're just kind of like a lot of a variety of powers that are just kind of okay in different circumstances. Commander effect, I think, is good. Bringing in Order 66 guys is nice. As a Palpatine, I just gave him a 3.5, and I think that's still a fine score. He's got some things he can offer, but overall, I just find him frustrating, personally. So, and Bloo gave him an 8.5, which in my opinion is crazy overrated. Yeah, I have no idea where that comes from. Maybe I'm totally missing something, but I think I just don't value betrayal quite as much as maybe the community does. Like I said, though, when it works, it's great. But how often is that going to actually happen? I like characters that are more sure of what they're doing, rather than very fluky. But anyway, I'm sure you guys will have stories of, I had this awesome game and betrayal worked and it swung the game and I won. But I've had way too many games where he just got just annihilated and betrayal never happened. So anyway, so Darth Sidious, Darth Lord of the Sith. Moving on to this next one. I feel like this guy is kind of weird. He has the vibes of the last guy in terms of a fighter, in terms of Sith Lord, and then he has the vibes of just like a force battery. And I think his problem is trying to do both just doesn't work because the force batteries, they tend to be in like the 30s range, so they're cheaper. You know, you can still have a squad of other stuff, and then the people who attack, they tend to have maybe a little bit more. I mean, this guy's stats are pretty similar to the last guy's, however, just a tick less on the stats, and you know, less interesting special abilities. Like, he doesn't have betrayal in this case. But the problem with doing both things at the same time is you wind up with a guy who's really expensive. He's also a force battery for less characters in your squad, and that's kind of, I think, counterintuitive, because you want to have like a cheaper battery to help more people, and he can't do that. So this guy's 130, 19, 14, and 20. He just has triple. That's fine. So, you know, he can defend himself if he needs to, and like, you know, he can attack back, but he'll melt so fast. His force power, so it does like how he has renewal. He has better powers in my opinion. So sweep is nice if you're going to run an attacker group or whatever. Force lightning, I do prefer lightning more than Sith lightning. And so that being the case, I think I like his force powers just a little more, or maybe the same. I think I rated his force powers the same as the last one, just because at the end of the day, it's kind of the net the same. I mean, assault is probably better. However, this guy has sweep instead. Sith lightning, force lightning, similar, just force lightning better on groups. And this commander effect is the standard, you know, like we've seen before, Palpatine, force battery, really good. However, I don't like it with him because he's so expensive, and he's a fighter, so he's going to be using sweep. He's going to be using his own force powers frequently, probably, which is going to take away from the team getting to use force powers. So, unfortunately, he's trying to do too much at once. It doesn't work. So overall, I think he still has good. He's a good, okay character overall. You know, for a 61, he's his fair. His force points is fair. I mean, his hit points is fair. Survivability overall is just bad. The attack is good. You know, 14 is at a 61. That's a little lower, so you're just kind of in the middle range. The damage is still good. Special abilities are fine. Force powers are fine. The ability synergy is not great. None of his powers synergize together well. His versatility, I think, is fine. Mostly buoyed up by the fact that he can fight and he can get force. It just doesn't do it amazingly well, but at least there's options. His commander effect is great, so don't forget that. However, I was tempted to knock it down because it is the same commander effect. However, I don't think he can utilize it very well, and so I was like, maybe his commander effect's weaker because it depends on force points, but whatever. I decided to be generous. Palpatine score, I think he's fine. He's good overall. Like, even though it seems like I'm being harsh on him, I don't think he's a bad character or a bad mini, honestly. He's not. He's just decent, you know. You're probably not going to use him, but whatever. So, Blue Milk score is a 7. That's slightly above average for Blue Milk. And I think I'd probably agree. Actually, I'd probably be more harsh on him than Blue Milk is. Blue Milk's a little too generous. But his specialties, he's a squishy duelist, force battery, so you kind of both of them. So he's not a very good force battery, and he's not a good duelist. He'll just melt in 5 seconds. And he's one of the cheaper guys you can pick up as well. So overall, I think he's the worst Sidious. He's decent force powers and kind of acts as a battery, but you know, since he can do combat, it's kind of counterintuitive. And like Darth Sidious, Sith Lord, he just has no survivability, so kind of a bummer. What do we got next? So we have the KOTOR Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. I kind of like this guy. Very different. He's kind of expensive for just doing reserves, and they're not like immediate reserves, but I think you can make it work. So he's a 37. He's 70 hit points, 14 defense, and then no attack and damage, and he can't actually do any damage. And so this guy's got Betrayal as well, so that's kind of cool. And he's got Alter, which is actually kind of fun. So Betrayal and Alter is kind of a cool combo. I didn't think about that actually until I just looked at this. So his survivability, it's still bad. Like, he has 14 defense, and it's not going to take too many shots to knock him out. So maybe Betrayal, maybe less chance of it working, but it could. But the cool thing is with Betrayal and Alter, if someone, like, you know, you can like force people to have a better chance at rolling ones against you, which is kind of cool actually. It's a really, really nice combination. And he has Master of the Force too, so you can like make it happen over and over and over again until the correct roll happens, which is a little crazy. So kind of a fun combination. Man, I didn't even think about that. That's really cool. So he's got Fringe Reserves 20 and Republic Reserves 20, and then clones are cheaper when you bring him into his squad. So the cool thing with this guy as well is if you put him with someone like, Yularen, someone with recon, then again you increase your opportunity to make these powers trigger. So with both of them, it's a 1 in 20 chance. No, it's a 1 in 10 chance, 10% chance that this will happen each initiative, which is okay. It's not bad. That's twice as good as a critical hit. But if you mix them with someone with a recon, then you can, have more opportunities to roll, and potentially, get the roll that you want, which is much better in this case. So definitely important to mix them with those guys. Again, like I said, force powers are really kind of meant, in my opinion, to make Betrayal activate. And his commander effect is okay. I mean, it's really specified for him. Just adjacent followers with the force rating gain bodyguard. So I don't really love that too much, because you're just saying, hey, Jedi, no matter what your role is, you're gonna be you're gonna absorb the damage for me. So it's like, okay, well, whatever, we'll see. But it is necessary to make him survive. So if you can find some nice force characters out there, maybe some of those Clone Strike Jedi that have like tons of hit points, but they don't do any damage, they have no double attack, all that crap. If you mixed him with someone who does have a lot of bang for their buck in terms of hit points and can help a little bit, that could be a good bodyguard to help him out. Anyway, let's finish him off. So overall, I think he's good. His hit points are poor. For 78 point hit points isn't that great, just in general. So his range survivability isn't good, and then his melee survivability is also bad. However, caveat, looking at this, I think having Master of the Force 2, Alter, Renewal, and Betrayal, I think that actually really, 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 really helps. He still has terrible defense and hit points, and he's still going to get eviscerated pretty quick. But his commander effect and all those things, I think, helps that survivability. So if I was going to amend this, I'd actually probably bump those numbers up. That's my bad. That's something I didn't really think about until I started thinking about it right now. So kind of cool. His survivability is maybe looks bad when you first look at it, but there's a lot of things behind the scenes that can help him out. So that's on me. Anyway, special abilities I think are awesome. All of these having Betrayal, making it easier to happen, all the reserves that can pretty easily happen if you set it up correctly. As force powers, solid. I think having Renewal and Master of the Force 2, and then having Alter thrown in there, I think it's solid. It's what he needs. It's solid. It's very good. The ability synergy is great. Man, I might even bump it up even more now that I saw the that combination of powers. Good. The versatility's fine. He's really just kind of really his whole point is just kind of bring the reinforcements and survive. So it's not like he does a lot, but what you bring in could be very versatile options. So that's that to keep in mind. Not a fan of the commander effect, but it's necessary. As a Palpatine, I think he's really good, so I gave him a 3.5 as well. He's very different, but I like this different. It's kind of a fun difference, so maybe I'll need to make a squad with this guy and release a video on it, because it's really, really, really cool. Really interesting idea. I mean, there's a lot of characters out there that do the reinforcements, but I think he might do it the best of a lot of them, except for the immediate reinforcements guys. He's pretty solid. So Blue Milk is a 7.44. That's about the same as kind of the score I gave. He's a reinforcer. It's surprisingly cheap to pick up. I mean, he's a KOTOR character and he costs $13. That kind of surprises me. Anyways, so like I mentioned, Alter is okay for some defense. And actually, Alter, I'd say, is really good at Betrayal. So keep that in mind. And then it works great in a squad with Recon. Absolutely. So overall, good character. I think he's a lot of fun. Will be interesting to see how to best maximize him. Darth Sidious Hologram, I'm not going to talk about him too much. Very self-explanatory. Great defense. You're paying 11 cost to basically give your allied characters. I'd have to double check. Is that every allied character or just allied character with the force rating? It might be just all allied characters. It probably is just all allied characters, honestly. If I just read it as is, it doesn't stipulate force users only. So yeah, that's kind of cool. I think so, yeah. But anyways, good mixing with this guy. You can move him, mix him with people, Sith Lords, or even fringe characters that are good that don't have renewal. And then again, if what I believe is correct, it can apply to anybody. There's so many options out there. Awesome, just kind of force battery. You can move him around, you know, put him in battle, kind of put him in the back if you continue to need that force renewal. But in general, like 11 points, giving like a lot of people on your team force renewal, it's a really, really good thing. So sign me up for it. So overall, Blue Milk score, gave him an 8.76. Just a fan. He's probably one of the best force batteries. He is Sith, so he's going to be locked on that team, kind of, but still, like, gee whiz. Blue Milk gave him a great score. I gave him a 4.38. That's awesome. That's a fantastic score. And I think, yeah, what he brings to the table is just kind of is what it is, and he's great at it. So there we go. Okay, we're on to the famous Emperor Palpatine that is too good for his own good. So Emperor Palpatine on throne, 33, so he's even cheaper than those first two force batteries we talked about. But this guy is similar in terms of stats, so 130, 21. But this guy is an emplacement, so he can't move, and I think that just doesn't matter, honestly. If you're starting in like a little room, just put him in the corner, put him somewhere where he has like kind of like good, he can be hidden, but then he can also kind of have like good awareness of the area so that he can use powers if he needs to. So yeah, I think that's kind of how you will set him up. He's got evade, and he's got force powers, so shooters are gonna have a hard time, especially like if a shooter is forced to like have to get close to him because of like the room in which he's situated. That's a problem, because if they get too close to him, they'll just get zapped really bad. And evade will still continue to work unless a shooter goes right next to him. So if a shooter gets right up to him and is able to do some damage, that could be a problem. However, it's still going to be tough to deal with. So yeah, this guy, it's funny, he has emplacement, but for having emplacement, he has kind of like sneaky, insanely good survivability, which is kind of strange, but he really does. His force powers, he's force 3 and force renewal 3, so like this guy's got all the force. You know, the whole team is good forever. Force lightning 3 and force push 2, so he's got excellent self-defense powers. He doesn't need any attack, he can just blast people away. And then commander effect is the classic amazing one. Just Emperor Palpatine just saying, hey everyone, use my force. And the cool thing, he has enough force. This guy actually has enough force for the whole team to go around, and it's crazy. Lots of cool characters you can mix him with. So overall, I think he's awesome. He's a 4.39. That's the best score of any Palpatine, in my opinion, by far, with the exception of the one we just talked about. Fantastic. His hit points for a 33, that's exceptional. His range survivability is surprisingly great for being an emplacement character. Melee survivability, still really good. If someone does get on top of him and, you know, you can't quite just blow him away with everything, like a melee character who's sufficient will be able to eventually take care of him, probably. But, you know, if this guy has support around him, maybe not. So max damage, great, especially with that Force Lightning 3. Special abilities. Ooh, did I screw that up? Why did I say poor? His special abilities aren't poor. What am I talking about? I mean, emplacement's not ideal. I kind of saw it as like, okay, emplacement, it's not ideal. That's all. But he's got evade, and that's good. So I think, man, I think maybe that's too harsh there. Maybe I'd just say it's fair. But like the fact that he can't move is a nerf that you have to admit. So I'd say maybe that's a fair score, but it doesn't matter because his force powers are fantastic. That kind of mixes with his commander effect, honestly, also fantastic. Ability synergy is awesome. Just kind of his whole role is so cool, so much fun. His Palpatine score, he gets a 5, so in my opinion, he is the best Palpatine. That's not surprising, everybody would agree. Blue Milk agrees that too. And his specialty, I just called him an elite force battery. And unsurprisingly, actually sometimes it's surprising with some characters, he is the most expensive Palpatine. He's about $40. So not like a terrible pickup, but like, gee whiz, he's so worth it if you could put him in your squad. Lots of fun squads to put together with him. So anyway, in summary, he's a totally bonkers battery. He's probably the best one in the game with all of the force batteries. He's got too much force. You just don't even know what to do with it all. So, lots of fun. Yeah, I actually really haven't used him too much. I didn't get him that long ago either, but I mean, just from stories I've heard, squads I look at, like, this guy's crazy. Let's see, who do we have left? Okay, left one is Darth Sidious, Sith Master. He's a 57, 120, 19, 15, and 20. So this guy is very, very similar to like Darth Sidious, Sith Lord and stuff as being a fighter. And I actually have reviewed him already, so if you go check out my Sith Lords video, I reviewed him there. However, I've made a couple tweaks since then, you know, based on some feedback. Especially some positive feedback. I've actually kind of tweaked a few things, bumped a couple things up just a little, you'll probably notice. But anyways, we'll just jump right into it. So he's melee and triple. He's Force Powers, he's got Force 2, Force Renewal 1, Force Lightning 2, which is really fun, Master of the Force 2, and Pawn of the Dark Side. So really cool that he's got nice defensive force power, or I shouldn't say defensive, but offensive force power. Pawn of the Dark Side, fun to have that back on a Sith team. Master of the Force 2, so like if he needs to, he can do a lot of re-rolling himself. And then another fun part here is Commander Effect is the switching one. So unfortunately, his switching is locked between him and mouse droids. However, it can still be pretty nice, and especially if he makes that with Pawn of the Dark Side, I think you can make for some really interesting and like nice kind of manipulation and tactics. Nothing necessarily comes to mind right now. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. That does seem pretty cool. So overall, I think he's really good. Honestly, I think he's a really, really solid Palpatine. Even though he's squishy, like the other one, I think for some reason for me, I think he's more forgiven. He's a fighter, and he has Pawn of the Dark Side, and I think that's actually okay, because, you know, if he's in a situation where maybe he's not fighting, he can very positively impact the battle. And then he can also, you know, with his Commander Effect Upon the Dark Side, and then he can get involved too if necessary, and he can you know, hit people back if he needs. So overall, that hit points and survivability, it still isn't good, but the attack, you know, awesome as well. Like I've mentioned, the damage is great, and he's a little cheaper too. So he's at 53. You're not paying, you know, like 62 or 63 for the other ones. 61. It's a hair cheaper. That max damage, the special abilities, I think are fine. You know, for 57, triple attacks pretty normal. Force powers are great. The ability synergy is great. The versatility overall is really great. Being able to have, being a decent fighter, just no survivability. Pawn of the Dark Side, the Commander Effect, really nice. You know, different options you got going on there. The Commander Effect's nice. I give him a 4. I think in the last video I did with him, I did a 3.5. But as far as Palpatines go, like I think he's a great Palpatine. He really is. I think he gets the fighting aspect of Palpatine right, where yes, he's squishy, but like if you attack him, he'll mess you up a little bit. And then he's got some nice manipulation and tactics going on with his powers. So pretty fun character, and he's also not that expensive either. About 14 bucks on eBay. So overall, in summary, so his Commander Effect and Part of the Dark Side combo, like I've, you know, nailed 100 times, really good. He can re-roll anything he wants to, and then though squishy, he can still dish some damage. So I'm a little more forgiving of his squishiness because, you know, I can kind of engage all of his powers, whereas, you know, I can't rely on just Betrayal to work whenever I want it to, unfortunately. And that guy's more expensive. This guy's a little cheaper, but I like it more, so more forgiving of him. So anyways, let's summarize everybody. So let's take a look and do our final ranking. So final ranking, in last place we have Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith. Oops, I cut off the rest of his name. Yeah, he's a 2.99. He's not terrible, but like I'd never use him. He's got his weaknesses. He's too squishy. He's trying to do too much. Oops, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Kind of surprised I put him this low. I think he's actually kind of fun. I think he's a character I definitely would try to use and maximize. Pretty fun. We got Emperor Palpatine, Sith Lord. So I know Blue Milk's very high on him. Unfortunately, I continuously don't have good experiences with this guy, so I have to put him low. And again, Betrayal is cool, but I mean, Betrayal would be a lot cooler if it was like a 15% chance. If it was like Kurtosis Gauntlet, you know, where it's like, you know, if you roll a 17 or 18 or higher, that's you know, a 3 in 20 chance. That's pretty good. That's like Vapid style or something like that. So unfortunately, it's too rare, but it's probably good that it's rare because it's kind of like a Disintegrations where, you know, if it happens every time, that's kind of ridiculous. Darth Sidious, Sith Master, bit of a step up. I do like him. A solid fighter, but then also I like his battle manipulation. Emperor Palpatine and Darth Sidious are basically just kind of 1A, 1B. Old characters, still very, very nice and solid. Darth Sidious holograms, we got a huge step up here, 4.35. And then Emperor Palpatine on throne is in first place. Unsurprisingly, him and hologram, fantastic. So here's kind of my overall summary. Like I mentioned, if you are just kind of tuning into this part and not watching the rest of it, there's a couple things I would change. I think the survivability on Supreme Chancellor Palpatine should go up a little bit, especially because of kind of that combination of, like I said, Master of the Force, Alter, and Betrayal. That can be kind of scary. Like, you're really making Betrayal scary at that point. So I'd kind of make that change, maybe some other things as well. But overall, this is kind of what it comes down to. We got Force batteries, we got kind of squishy duelists going on here. Darth Sidious Sith Master should also kind of be a squishy duelist, but a little bit better. And then, yeah, we got the Reinforcer Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. So overall, most of these Palpatines, they are not survivable at all. That's not their forte. They're kind of like stay away from the action, and then if necessary, just kind of jump out there and go crazy, or just kind of stay away in general. Some are awesome force batteries. Some are just kind of trying to do some sort of hybrid of some sort. But overall, I think Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, whatever, fun character. In general, they're all pretty good. Some of them kind of mediocre, but if you're going to use any of these, if you're going to use a fighting Darth Sidious, I'd recommend Darth Sidious Sith Master for sure. And then if you want to use a battery one, I think the original Emperor Palpatine, not bad. However, because he literally costs 40 and Emperor Palpatine on throne is a 33, it's just, there's just really no reason, honestly. I just use Emperor Palpatine on throne, him, or Darth Sidious hologram if you're Sith. That's one thing to keep in mind. So really just kind of the last three especially. But then if you're Republic, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine could be a fun squad to build around. So anyway, that about does it for Emperor Palpatine. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I kind of rambled on for a long time, and I only talked about like 7 characters or 8 characters. So anyway, please like, please subscribe. As always, again, comment. I'd love to hear what you think about Palpatine. What kind of interesting experiences have you had? Am I totally wrong on Emperor Palpatine Sith Lord? Or do you agree? I think he's overrated, just plain and simple. Super overrated, but he's not a bad piece, though. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's an 8.5 like the community seems to think on Blue Milk. But anyways, we all know Blue Milk's rating's a little wacky. And then anyways, I'd like to also hear what other characters or maybe even like topics do you want me to talk about on this channel. I've had a lot of recommendations. I'm slowly getting through them, and I'll eventually get through them at some point, but it's been awesome, and super grateful for all the awesome just community engagement. It's definitely just kind of picked up every single week, every month. Just kind of gets more and more. It's a lot of fun. So anyways, I'll stop rambling. I'll leave it there. And anyways, until next time, have a good one.